Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. So I always miss everyone, right? But today I just miss everyone a little bit more. I don't know how to explain it. I was just like, and I'm always excited to do these calls, but this morning I was actually counting down. I was like, really, really, really like, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. Hey, Brian. And the irony of that is I don't actually have anything really to say. In fact, I was just showering and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, am I really going to start every call the same exact way? And I really don't have much to say because, well, what are you doing? You're doing stuff, therefore you should have stuff to say. But the other end of it being the stuff that's being done is stacking upon itself to equal the thing that then is able to be shared, right? So it really is just having these, nothing to say, right, Robbie? Dude, boo, Anthony. Um, but again, it's very important to show face. It just is. And it's not that anybody reminds me of that. I know it's important. In fact, when I was younger, you learn some stuff from your parents, right? And you try to identify the good stuff and the bad stuff. So my father, hey Frida, was silence is good. My father was very good at providing a lot of good stuff to learn from and a lot of bad stuff to learn from. And it's funny because as you get older, the things that you dislike about your parents, you realize, well, I dislike that they did this. Okay, good. You didn't like it, and it was unambiguously bad, right? The fact that they did that was bad. Okay. But then you get older and you say, well, I'm never going to do that. Well, why aren't you ever going to do it? Because I didn't like how my parents did that to me. And I realized how it made me feel. And then you have this little paradox, right? Because you would have never identified or recognized that that behavior was bad if you didn't live it. Therefore, your ability to choose whether to do it or not in the future makes you a better person. Like you are the culmination because you went through that. So the paradox becomes, is a parent that only offers the child painful situations a good parent? Right? How do you measure that? Because very easily and very like muscle memory, no, but that's bad. But if your parent was so good that you only had good memories, then are you prepared for life at all? I don't think you are, because everyone in life is not going to treat you as your really, really great parent did. So it's just, as you get older in life, you start thinking of these things. And again, it all goes to Ted, right? So it's not like I'm just pontificating out loud, but in terms of what introduced this line of thinking, or sharing at least, was that one of the things that my father taught, or at least that I learned through observation, was that no matter what, always be available, be accessible. Whether you have good news, bad news, doesn't matter, be there. Because if you have bad news, man up and give bad news. If you have good news, man up and give good news. Do not be the person that is only available during good times, because then the absence of you will always equal the presumption of bad times. And then when you allow someone to conclude in their head that bad things are happening and you're unavailable, then they are now victim to their own worst fear. And it doesn't mean that they are a bad person, right? But what else could they deduce? So again, I'll always be right here. Always. That doesn't mean I have good news for you, right? I could have the worst news ever and I would still be right here. So please don't see my presence as, oh, okay, it must be good because he's here. No, it must be honest because I'm here, because I'm always going to be right here, right? So that's that. But actually, so I emailed earlier this week, just because I had seen OpenAI post that they had a new partnership with some company for humanoid robots. And then I also saw that they had done a partnership with somebody else, I think it was Quebec, to test pilot an offering that focuses and on that local community. And it's really nice to see these things happen, because like I always speak to my team about, we've been ahead of the curve the whole way through. Now, that's not to say that we're so smart. Of course, part of it is that we're smart. But like Dostoevsky had said, real intelligence is the ability to be in pain and suffering all the time. Because it's only when you have that level of intelligence can you see what is actually happening, and that will cause you pain. Like if you're not able to see the bad things that are happening, you're not in pain because there's nothing bad to see, right? So in a really perverse kind of way, um, ignorance is bliss. The opposite of that is true of intelligence. So that doesn't actually equal anything. It's just an additional fact of evidence. Okay, well, is Rhino at least going in the right direction? Like, are they at least having ideas or forecasting ideas or seeing things before they actually happen? Okay, you could go to any two-bit prognosticator, or if you all remember, what was her name? The Jamaican lady, call me now and I tell you everything. I forgot her name, but she was really famous on the commercials. And if these people knew everything, they'd be so rich, but they're not. So you can know some things and not be rich, which means you can be a failure at business while knowing. Like, how many times have you heard from someone, oh my God, I invented that? Well, I didn't really invent it. I said it, and then someone else invented it and made a business. If I only did it, I'd be a millionaire, right? Okay. So it's just an additional piece of evidence in terms of, I don't know if this is going to be successful or not, but are we at least on the right track? Like, are we at least seeing things before they happen? And the answer is yes, right? Unambiguously, yes. Okay. The reason I mention that is because the difference in the equation of, oh, I thought this and then someone else did the business, discounts if the person was smart enough that was thinking it to patent it. Because then you can let anyone do it, right? Like hey, all you guys, yeah, great businesses. I thought of it first. Great. How much did you make? Ha! Patent, lawsuit, settlement. Now, that's not our goal, duh. But is it true that we have been ahead of things? Yes. And that we have taken that knowledge and planted our flag in November 2023 and patented everything that we thought would be true today then? The answer is yes. In fact, the things that we patent still haven't actually happened. Well, then, what are you really like? What did you just say? Then you saw something, but you didn't see something that didn't happen, but it's gonna. What I said in the email that I sent out was, those humanoid robots, cool. Okay, great. Let's play it out. How does a company that make humanoid robots make money? Well, they're going to make the robots and sell them. Okay, let's go even before that. How did they make the robots? Well, they're really smart and did a lot of research and development. Okay, who do you think paid for that? Well, they had investors. Okay, do you think the investors was charity, or do you think that they would like a return at some point? Well, of course they'd like a return, so then we could agree. These humanoid robots have to make money. Okay, great, cool, we're there. How do they make money? Well, Ant, you dummy, look how cool they are. They're just gonna make a bunch and put them out there. Okay, so what do these humanoid robots do? Well, they're really great. They could cut your cat's hair, or they could walk your dog, or they could serve you a coffee, or okay, that sounds awesome. Can they hurt somebody? Can they malfunction? Can they put someone's life in danger? Well, they're certainly not built for that. I didn't say they built for it. Can you tell me they won't do that? Well, no. But I'm sure that they'll get good enough, and you have to get them out there and then figure. You don't do that with things that could affect people's lives, right? Like, you would never make a plane and say, this is our 1.0 version. We're probably going to have a bunch of crashes, but we're going to learn from the crashes. No, there's certain things you can't, like with cops, like with planes, you can't have bad apples, right? Like, and it's a joke from Chris Rock, because during the police shootings that got the Black community really, really energized, the thing that the cops always say is there's always a few bad apples in every profession, which is true. Chris Rock as a comedian took it a step further, which again, I think even Chris Rock would say was comical, but there is a kernel of truth in it, right? And his joke was, there are some professions that cannot afford to have bad apples. Like for instance, if an airplane crashed, the airline can't come out and say, well, you know, we had a few bad apples. It's like, no, you can't crash a whole airplane because one guy, you have to filter out for that. Now, obviously, that's not the same thing because there's how many more police officers versus pilots, and their jobs are very different. Police officers have to make life or death decisions immediately. Pilots have a presumption of charting the course, right? Like, so it's not an exact apples to apples, but he's a comedian and he's really like, George Carlin's my favorite, Chris Rock is number 2, right? So I share that with you. But it goes to the same presumption of humanoid robots or self-driving cars. You can't just have like, let's figure it out. Okay, yeah. So these guys, they made the humanoid robot. It's really cool. They said it isn't going to hurt anyone. But you're saying they can't mass produce it. So what are they going to do? Just produce little of it? Yeah. They're going to have to test it, right? Like they'll have maybe a Starbucks with a humanoid robot behind the counter. Okay, great, cool. So what's the leap from that to police officer? What's the leap from that to self-driving car, right? Like, how can you turn that humanoid robot into a mass product? Because obviously that's where it's going to end up. The technology is not going to stop. It's not like we're going to say, well, we know that can do that, but we're not going to allow it. In fact, if you think about slavery and take away the emotional aspect of it, what was it? It was people forcing labor upon, and I'm purposely taking emotion out of it, so don't crucify me here. It was a person that identified an asset. Now it was another person, right? But they saw it as an asset, right? So again, don't crucify me, I'm just telling the story. They did not see the person, the slave, as a human. They saw it as an asset. So a person identified an asset that was free labor and was able to have a productive capacity, hence equaling a higher income and a lower expense, right? Slavery, for as all of the evil it was, and again, I wasn't around then, right? Like I don't know slave owners, but I imagine some of them were just bad people. But I imagine some of them selectively believed, well, this is the culture we live in. This is what these people do. Okay, I'm just a part of the culture, right? And again, I don't think that's correct, but what I can tell you going through personal journeys, that the person that speaks up against culture or against norms is attacked. So even when you take a look at Nazi Germany or slave owners or all the rest of it, again, all evil people, right? Like, don't say anything otherwise. But if you were to interview any one of them and say, listen, did you know it was wrong? I did. Well, why'd you do it? Because if I didn't do it, then everyone would look at me and I would be the one that's ostracized because they didn't want my dissent. Because I was specifically told, if you even speak up about this and start getting other people to think the same way, we'll kill you. So what was I going to do? So is there a justification for doing something evil if your life is on the line? I don't know. I know I wouldn't. But if I had kids right there, like, again, you start going down this slippery slope. But again, let's pull back from that because that's not what this is about. If you take yourself and pull yourself back from that, is a humanoid robot the perfected system of slavery? I think the answer is yes, right? Like if you can have a humanoid robot and say you can have 1,000 humanoid robots, that is perfected slavery because it's not a person, it really is an asset, it really is doing something, it really doesn't have any cost, it's already paid for, and it has a productive capacity. Okay. So then we can see that not only has history guided us that this makes sense on a human level or business level, but we can see that the technology fulfills that prognostication of the evils of the past. Okay, great. Well, now you're delving into a whole bunch of like, how does this work? Blah, 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 blah. And then the so when you think about it, the mass production of these humanoid robots has to be complementary to the society because you cannot have a bunch of robots and people saying, I'm scared, I don't want to leave my house. You can't have it. So how do you solve that? Well, the humanoid robot would have to be able to identify person by person by person in such a personalized manner that it would be able to behave in a way that was commensurate with that person, like a butler, right? Butlers are really, really good at this, or hookers, right? And not to bring up sex workers, but they're really good at this. In fact, a hooker can meet any guy, if she's a good one, or him, right? Like whatever, can meet any person and camouflage and chameleonize to what their needs are. The point being that to ever scale your business to a randomized public, you have to be fairly proficient in personalizing your interaction with each individual, allowing them to feel that the interaction relationship you have is personalized, unique, and special to them. And so it's funny. Well, I'm only mentioning it because I spend my mornings, each morning, studying psychology. And there's this woman, Sadi Khan, I think her name is, and she's a psychiatrist. And what she was talking about on the Tom Billow podcast was that many men that she knows at an age of like 50, 60 that are CEOs all have some type of relationship with some type of hooker. And they fall in love with them, like they love them. And her commentary was that these women understand what it is that they're looking for, hence they're able to provide that to them. But they do it in such a personalized manner that the men, even though they know that this woman is doing the same thing with others, doesn't matter to them because all they care about is their personalized relationship with them. Meaning, it is part, and again, that's not the totality of the evidence, but it is part of the human behavior spectrum that if somebody can make you feel, even if you're not, even if you know you're not, but make you feel like you're the one and only in their life, you will selectively block out all non-confirming data. Like how many people have been in relationships where they know the other person's cheating, but it's just when I'm with them, they make me feel, right? So, and again, this isn't a commentary on my own life, although I imagine personal anecdotes are slipping their way in, but this is really a commentary on human behavior altogether. The point being, for any humanoid robot to ever get to the point that they're mass produced, and again, that's the goal. I'm not saying the goal, the technology is saying the goal. If you think that for 1 second that the world will choose not to solve something that businesses would exponentiate their profits and civilization as a whole will be benefited for just because they don't feel like doing it or because the problem's difficult, then you're living in like, you shouldn't be on this world, right? Like you're living in La La Land. This will happen. It's just a matter of how to solve for it. Okay. So the email that I had sent out earlier in the week shows that what we had patented is the actual system of TED. The system is user plus lifetime AI companion that machine learns plus fill in the blank closed-end marketplace. Okay, and that doesn't really say anything. Okay, well, how does that AI learn? Well, it learns through interaction. Okay, great, and still not saying anything. Every AI learns. Okay, you're a tough cookie. The goal of the learning is for the AI to make the recommendation on what to purchase from that closed-end marketplace. Okay, Ant, you're really not saying at a 95% recommendation, right? Like the AI will not make that recommendation unless they believe with a 95% certainty that you're going to say yes to it. Okay, we're kind of getting somewhere. So how does it do that? Well, that's the algorithm, right? Like, and I shared it with everyone. If you are so smart that you can go ahead and piece it together, God bless. But just trust that it's in there, right? Because I wouldn't be saying it now if I didn't do it, because then you would, so just stay with me a little bit. Okay, so the algorithm will self-learn and be able to predict and suggest at a 95% certainty. Okay, great. So what does it pull from? Everything. Trillions of data points every trillionth of a second, constantly A/B testing against what it has to produce a better outcome. Okay, all right, so let's say I go with you. That all sounds, but it sounds like you're on the right track. Okay, so this AI can, at a 95% certainty, predict what you're going to buy. Okay, great, then what? Or is that like the end of your tricks? No. The next step of the trick is once the AI believes that they have achieved that 95% certainty 95% of the time, it then will do a sequential calculation to equal 95% to autonomously do that action on your behalf. Okay, you lost me. So the AI knows when you get Chinese food. Every Friday, 6 o'clock, you order Chinese food and you're boring and you get the same General Chow chicken with the pork fried rice because you're boring. Okay, great. So the AI knows that 95% of the time you're going to do that. And it's recommended it to you and you say yes every time. So at least for the algorithm, it actually produces a result of 100%. And it's produced a result of 100% of the time. Therefore, that now brings it to the next level of reaching a 95% consensus 95% of the time. Therefore, the AI will then go ahead and order that Chinese food for you with your own boring meal that you always get and have it delivered at the time that you always eat it. Okay. Now that AI went into your bank account and made a purchase on your behalf using your money without you even asking it to do it. And if you say no, like the food comes and you're like, Ted, I didn't want this, the AI will cover the cost because the AI has the access to the corporate account and blah, blah, blah. But if you do say no, then Ted's going to be like, all right, well, I'm never doing that again because I'm not here to just give you free meals, right? Like I thought you liked it. If you don't, cool. Meal on me, never doing it again. Okay. But what if Ted got it right? The person would then say, well, thanks, Ted. I'm so happy my Chinese food's here. Like, this is great. It's here without me even thinking about it. Okay, so what we can see is that's quite a value. The person is happy. Now take that and extrapolate it to every decision anyone could ever make for the history of their life. Because again, Ted does this with every micro decision. And when the micro decisions escalate to a point of being actionable and fulfill this equation, it then happens. Okay, so what's the point? I don't know what that is. I think I got a bug bite. The point of the story is, if Ted is able to know you so well that it can predict your behavior to a point that it can take your money without your permission, use it, and you're going to say thank you, do you think Ted, by all metrics, likely knows you better than anyone knows you, including yourself? The answer is yes. Because, and if you say the answer is no, well, Ted doesn't love me and Ted doesn't know me as much as my mother does and all that stuff, yeah, maybe, I have no idea. But the only metric that is calculable across the spectrum of humanity is money, value, exchange of value. Therefore, and it's, I wish it weren't true. And I don't want to say it's 100% true, but 99.999% of the time it's true that if you show me your bank account, I can tell who you are, right? Like if I see that you're subscribing to OnlyFans, or I could see that you're getting paid by OnlyFans. And I always say this to the grocer at the checkout of the grocery store. And they see me and I present as like a fairly competent person. Like I don't look like I'm homeless and I speak well and all the rest. So I suspect that the grocery clerk looks at me as like, oh, this is someone that might be doing something, respectable with their lives. And that's not in contrast of what they're doing, but just the next sentence is the point. I'll always say to them, when I was growing up, one of the jobs I always wanted to do was be a grocer. And they look at me like, buddy, I'm making like $10 an hour here. You're buying filet mignon, right? Which I don't, but unless it's on sale, which it's never on sale. But sometimes the porterhouse is on sale and the porterhouse has the filet. Anyway, getting off the course. And they look at me like a little funny. And I say to them, I know that sounds funny, but I'm a behavioral science background. So I always admire that from your perch, you know everything that is happening in the life of the person that you're ringing up. And they look at me and I go, well, if you don't see that, well, then you just don't have the same interests as I, which is fine. But you do have the ability to. Like, for instance, say a female is buying, menstrual cycle things. Well, you know the time of their month, right? If you see that they're buying that with, like, say, Doritos, you know how they behave on it, right? If you see a male buying, say, condoms, you know that maybe he's presumed to have a lucky evening. If you see him also buying like a pizza, well, then you would presume that maybe his nights with whoever he's going to have it with isn't all of that special. If you see him buying it with roses, now it's like maybe he's having that third date and he's being prepared. Take that and extrapolate it to everything. Like, say, someone that is only buying vegetables all the time and is now buying candy bars. It's like, well, what happened in their lives? They're obviously becoming quite depressed. It's just like, for instance, every time I shop, I still buy two little cars, and it's for my children. And even though I don't, and that's a whole different story, anyone that's checking me out would say, well, I never see him with kids, but he's still buying things for kids. I wonder what's going on in his life. I'm looking at the things he's purchasing. There's not like applesauce. There's not like mashed vegetables. There's not like Cheez-Its or macaroni and cheese. There's vegetables. Kids don't eat vegetables. He eats quite healthy. It's clear to see he doesn't have kids, but he's buying toys for kids. So it's always interesting to me. But the point being, I'm purchasing those things, right? Like my money, which is something of value that allows me to live a particular living standard or protect that living standard, is then being substituted for these particular items that will either maintain my living standard or increase my living standard. Therefore, they're valuable to me. Therefore, if you knew everything that I purchase to the point that you're able to predict that I'm going to purchase it before I purchase it, and I'm going to thank you for it, presumably you know me quite well. Okay. So if you take that knowledge of someone, well, now you have this essence, you have their core, you have their personality in their interaction with Ted. So how do you monetize that? Like, what do you do with that? Well, that's what the TED card is. And even in the patent doesn't say anything about TED card, because the TED card is the consequence of what we're describing, and what we're describing is in it, right? So you couldn't make a TED card without having the algorithm and the process, right? Like we didn't just put an algorithm, we put the process and defined it. So it's not like we're susceptible to someone else saying, oh, we know what you're doing, but we made a better algorithm, so thanks. No. We worded what we were doing and why we're doing it. So nice try, buddy. But the point being, well, this thing, well, that would be like a TED card. Okay, so Anthony, you're telling me about a TED card and you're telling me about humanoid robots, and I don't see how this card and this, like, what happens? Okay. Well, then if everybody has TED, which again goes to the UBI and the full employment guaranteed program, which I don't want to get into. And I even said in the email, I'm not getting into the minutia of that, because I think that's still on the level of debate. I just happen to think I'm right, but I do think it would foster a debate. And I don't want to be disrespectful in shooting down what you say, because I believe what I believe, right? So that conversation would be like, hey, Ant, let's get on the phone for an hour and have that debate. Fine, but not on our call, right? So I don't want to get into that. But let's presume it to be there. So the engagement is there. So TED has plenty of sample size to create the data points that produce this outcome of the TED card. Okay. So now, like an RFID chip, the humanoid robots could identify TED card. Well, Ant, I don't want all my data in these humanoid robots. You lost me there. You're telling me like my essence is now in that. No, calm down. The data is stored within you, like your TED, like that's protected. It's encrypted. And again, Anthony encrypted anything. For the purposes of this conversation, since this doesn't exist, when it does exist, there will be like a nuclear amount of like attention paid to like that this is data that is inaccessible like ever for the history of the world, right? Okay, so walk with me there. TED holds the data, but TED synthesizes and makes deductions on the data. That's what's public. So for instance, nobody cares, well, maybe they do, but nobody's going to know that you just bought a whole bunch of condoms and roses. The humanoid robot will have the presumption that you're excited about your evening. They're not going to know why you're excited. They're just going to have the presumption that you are excited. Therefore, with the humanoid robot, when you get into the duration or the proximity of the robot where the RFID chip, the TED card is activated per se, the humanoid robot will be able to say, oh, hey, Brian, have a good night, right? And Brian's like, my God, I love that guy. Like every time I walk past him, he just knows the right thing to say. Well, Ant, you're thinking really far out. That's fine. But does the idea make sense? Have you heard an idea that solves what this big problem is that you would think is better than what I just suggested? And the answer is no. Because if you did, please email it to me so that I could readjust. The point being, that is patented. We have that already. Therefore, when we see the postings about humanoid robots, yeah, we didn't create a humanoid robot. I don't need to create a humanoid robot. But I do know if you want to go ahead and scale those things, you're going to have to talk to us, right? Because you can't do it, or I'm sure you could, but it wouldn't be as good as without us. Because in lieu of us, these companies will find their own solutions. And the solutions they're going to find is as they enter into any different municipality, because to put humanoid robots somewhere, it's going to be like a mayor decision. Like no company is going to be like, oh, hey, we don't really need to talk to the town. We're just going to put these robots. No, the town's going to have to be a part of it. 10-foot legs. Yeah, I love it. Therefore, these businesses or these corporations or companies that create these things are going to say to, and they're probably going to be fairly prominent, right? Like if you built a humanoid robot, you're probably like Microsoft or something. So you're going to go to the mayor and say, hey, listen, we're Microsoft. You're the mayor. I see that you have you have these cameras that monitor how people drive, and you have these cameras in all the stores. So we kind of like you have a sense of people's behavior. You probably have records on your people, right? This is what we're going to do for you because, we love you. Like we're here for the good stuff. We'd like to partner with you. Oh my God, do you hear? They want to partner with us. Oh, so cool. And in fact, we're going to pay you like a ton of tax dollars because we're going to, do this partnership. Okay, so this is how the partnership works. Everything that you've ever had on anyone in this town, including the footage, the everything, you're going to share with us. And then we're going to take everything that we have on everyone, do their social media interactions, all the rest, and we're going to combine it with what you have. And we're going to use facial technology to identify who which person is. And this is going to create the persona of that person. Doesn't that make sense? We'll know everything about them. Well, that does make sense. Money, 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 money. That does make money, money. Oh, yeah, it makes perfect sense in the world. Okay, cool. Great. So then we're going to be able to test these things and it'll be great. Cool. Okay. Maybe that sounds like it makes sense. Maybe it does. The problem is, go to the core of it. The interaction you will have with any of those humanoid robots, which by the way, we've already said it's going to scale, is based on what? Is it based on you, or is it based on what others have shared about who you are? Now, what if those others don't like you and they want to kind of like ostracize you? What if they do like you because you espouse certain things and they want to elevate you? What if they want you to like something, so I presume he likes that. The point is, when you go ahead and scale a thing like a humanoid robot, now take it to autonomous cars, take it to wherever you want to take it, they need to be aligned with the interests of the person, by the individual, by that core. Like, it has to be them. They have to be in control of the interaction. Because if they're not in control of the interaction, remember that whole like slavery thing we just spoke about? The people that feel like they're being empowered as the slave owners are actually the slaves. Because in slavery, if you do some research, what you'll find is there wasn't just masters and slaves. The masters would identify which slaves really bought into the system. And it's kind of like in jail, you're institutionalized, like in Shawshank, right? Like if you've been in jail for 40 years, you kind of don't want to leave jail. Like that's home to you. You know how to do that. You don't know how to live in the real world. So this isn't to say that any of the slaves were like, liked slavery. It's just that's the world they knew. And they realized or accepted that their lives would be better if they just accepted it rather than fought it. That's a totally reasonable idea, but that's how behavior works. So there were rungs of it. There were levels to it where some slaves would then say, hey, listen, owner, I got you. Thanks for the extra steak tonight. Thanks for giving me that slave to sleep with tonight. Thanks for treating me special. I'll make sure all these other slaves act accordingly. In which case, you have middle management. The point being, that is what will happen. And this isn't me like trying to scare people. Like, I'm a pretty like logical person. And you can logically deduce for yourself that the scale of this only has two questions. Well, one question with two answers or two choices. Who controls the interaction between the person and the robot? Fill in the blank with robot, right? Like car, whatever, whatever. If the person is in control of the interaction, then the robot is subservient to them. If the companies and government and everyone is in control of the interaction, then the person is only middle management. So the question then becomes, well, what do you want life to be? Do you want to actively make the decision to embrace a renaissance like no one's ever seen by walking down this road with Rhino, I guess for lack of a better term? Or do you want to allow the indecision to subsequently make the decision that you accept a feudal system where you're middle management for the rest of time? Anthony, rest of time sounds like a long time. Like, I think you're being a little bit hyperbolic. Am I? Because the feudal system worked really, really well, where you had masters and middle management and farms and indentured servants. Well, Ant, it didn't last forever. Yeah, do you know why? Well, I'm sure people rose up. They did. Do you know why? Because they did. No, because there was a thing called the Black Plague, right? Everyone was dying. A third of Europe died, which meant now the slaves or the middle management were no longer afraid of death because they were dying anyway. So they said, well, if I'm not afraid of death, let's revolt and like try to take back stuff. And then you had the Magna Carta of 1215, where Europe said, all right, guys, listen, see these slaves? Yeah, we had a really good time. Like we really tricked them, but now they're not even afraid of death. So either they're going to kill us or we need to produce some type of system where they have, I don't know, these things called rights and like, let's give them some stuff. And that produced democracy, right? And again, that's a very short version of history, but it's true, right? Like I'm sure I missed a couple of things, but structurally that's correct. What's different about this time is this whole feudal system we just spoke of, who was in charge? Well, the kings and the lords and okay, what were their weaponry like? Well, they had horses and they had swords. Okay. And this is what they ruled with? Yeah, well, you know, they had swords and horses and archers and jesters and like hot oil and feathers and nasty piranha, and they had all of these things. Okay. But you're telling me that it was very manual, like they had to actually go do it. Did they have guns? No, they had bow and arrow. Okay. So the technology wasn't as sufficient that it really could like just control a population. It was just kind of like strength in numbers type of thing. Like for instance, one knight with a sword and a horse was probably worth say 15 slaves or people there. Yeah, because 15 of them, you know, how many people can the swordsman kill before the rest grab him, right? Like you have to, you got me. It took me off my horse. Now they took my sword. I'm dead, right? Like you ever see Braveheart? So there was always going to be the possibility of a revolt, hence the revolt. You just needed the Black Plague to kind of kick in. The difference with this is AI is like your machines. Like you're not going to be able to beat a robot. If there's a humanoid robot, did you ever see RoboCop? Like it's going to kill all of you. And not you, but I'm just saying in general. Okay, and you're talking about a robot. Okay, well, they could mass produce them. There could be like a bazillion robots. Okay, well, I'll get in my car. What car? They're going to be autonomous. I'll get in a plane. They're not going to be flown by pilots. Well, this is a problem. Well, they're controlled by electricity, right? So we'll just unplug them. Electricity is going to be coming from the sun. Do you think solar energy is not going to like power these things? So, Ant, what are you saying? I'm saying annihilation, like Judgment Day, like you're dead. And it will happen in the sense of, well, if AI, which it will be able to do, can transfer consciousness, well, then your body is just a vessel, right? Like if I could surgically take your brain out of your head and put it into like a baby's head, then presumably you could live for the next 100 years as yourself because you have all of your thoughts. Well, what's your brain? It's a database. Okay. So everything that is you is within you. It's in your consciousness. Okay. So you know this TED card we just spoke of? Well, we're talking about using it for good. Is it possible that the masters would have their own TED card, in which case they'd be able to transfer their consciousness from human body to machine body? Yeah, sure, why not? So is it then possible to presume or say middle management, hey, listen, if you stick with us, we'll make sure you live forever, we'll transfer your consciousness, whatever, and everyone else is going to die? Well, yeah, you've seen it as less recently as Nazi Germany, and even as recently as COVID. You've had neighbors that have known and loved their families and everyone forever that were calling and saying this person left the house without a mask. Like this stuff isn't, it sounds dystopian, right? Like you're listening to me like, oh, Anthony really went off the reservation. But it's not that. You know, I would never thank the individuals that have put me in a situation where I feel like Jesus walking through a desert for 40 days, but I have been able to look at the deepest depths and look at the abyss and be tempted and understand things that are on a more profound level that have allowed me to see things in such a way that bring it all together, I'm able to see going forward. The point of the story being, it is logical to conclude, at least entertain, that there is choices that need to be made today that will produce the road that we go down. And each road has a logical outcome. Like that's not hard to see. Therefore, what are the decisions being made today? Okay, that's what brings us back to TED. That's what brings us back to the patent. That's what brings us back to all the work that I'm doing. So I'm almost done with everything that I just said, putting it in a nice, neat package. This nice, neat package is then going to be, which I really want to do March 1st. So this is like the part where it's like, I'm not on track. I want to say by Friday. And let me take that back. It will be done by Friday because I only have March to raise money. Like we need money. By saying need money, though, it's because we want to go ahead and not need money ever again. Like this is the point. We have the patent, we have the thing, blah, 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 blah. And needing money doesn't mean that we're going to send out an email and raise it within Rhino. Of course, you're light if you want to. God bless. Like that's fine. Which actually goes to the point of whenever there's always a random, and I don't want to say random, but like there's always someone that'll email me, hey, I'm still getting charged by Rhino, but Rhino Bucks is bankrupt. What's that about? We're not going to ever take investment again after we raise this money. Therefore, the money that you're still sending into Rhino is adding to your ledger, to your account balance, which is adding to your equity position at the level that it currently is at, right? Like whatever it is, like 4.5, I don't know. But whatever the valuation is today, that's going to be yours. I think it's at 4.5 million. Once we go ahead and do the fundraising, that's going to be at least at 100 million valuation. And once that money's raised, we're never going to take money again. Therefore, the person that believes in what we're doing on the other side of that would say, oh, I'm so happy that I built as large of a position as I could because I own X percentage of that company and look how much they're worth. So it's not that Rhino's taking money from anyone unsuspectedly. It's that Rhino is allowing you to continue investing. And if you choose to, God bless. There have been people that said, Ant, I did not know this. And I say, I'll refund it all right now. Like we have money, like I'm not broke. I'll refund all of it if someone wants, right? Like that's not the conversation. So I want to say out loud, that's the reason for it. And if you don't like it, email me and I'll send it back to you, right? So end of story. Well, not end of story, but that's that. But this nice little package that I want to have together by Friday, the plan for the rest of the month of March is to then send that out to everyone that would ever need it. Fortune 500 marketing companies, CMOs, hedge funds, investors, private investors, running ads on all of the platforms, enticing and introducing and influencing investors to take a look, see if they want to be a part of it, so that we can raise the money. And the beauty of this is that when you're talking to someone with money, then their belief in what you're doing equals a larger aggregate solution, right? So for instance, I remember when I was in the stock market, one of the rebuttals we'd give someone is, hey, listen, you want to invest in stocks? I'm broke right now. And to normal people like you and I, it's like, all right, they're broke, they have no money. But that wasn't what you were supposed to say, because being broke is very relative. And the rebuttal was, Mr. Jones, I could appreciate that. But when Donald Trump only has 10 million in his bank account, he feels broke. When I only have $10 in my bank account, I feel broke. Where do you fit in on that? And then the person would say, well, I feel a little broke because I only have like a couple of 100,000 and, stocks are down. And all right, great. How about I offer a solution and be the one to bring that back up for you? I'm not asking you for a large amount. How about 10%, which is like, I don't know, 20 grand. I'll get you into stock. You'll double and you'll be happy. Okay. Now, whether the guy says yes or no to that, I have a note card. He has 400,000 liquid in stocks, which means until this guy tells me to go F my mother, I'm going to have a new special idea to call him with because he has the money to say yes. By the way, every time I say things like that, I always apologize and then also say that when I get into stockbroker mode, it still comes out. Like, this is the way people speak on Wall Street. So I hope I'm able to offer you a glimpse into Wall Street, but from a perspective of like, I know that's not the way you should talk, right? But it's still like, put me on Wall Street, right? Like, I know how to talk to those people. The point being, the packages we're sending out and the people that we're going to be trying to communicate with will have the ability to make decisions that have 2, 3, 4 commas in it. Therefore, and like again, on Wall Street, so before you could actually pitch someone, you would go through your lead cards and you would qualify people, right? They had to be, what was the word? Something investors, accredited investors, which meant that they had to make at least 500,000 a year or have 500,000 in assets, right? Like, the point being, you want to speak to someone that if they said yes, it could be of consequence. So when you were qualifying prospects, you had a stack of cards. Hey, Mr. Jones, this is Anthony Calichone over at JP Turner. How are you today? Hey, listen, I got a really great idea. I don't have the idea now, but I just want to open up the lines of communication. Is that okay with you? Of course you're going to say yes. Like, yeah, sure. See you later, buddy. All right, let me just ask you one question. If you love the idea as much as I did, could you put 100,000 behind it that second? Now that's a number that hits people. 100,000, like you're like a voice on the phone calling me, asking me if I'm going to put 100,000 an idea from someone I don't even know about. That's how us poor people think, right? Rich people would never, ever embarrass themselves to ever say no. They would just tell you, buddy, I could put $1 million behind it if I want. That doesn't mean I'm giving you the money. Click. Because if you spent your whole life amassing such an amount of money, it's not that it's who you are, but it's a culmination of your hard work. You would never then say to someone you don't have it. You would just say you're not getting it. It's like when the children of rich parents are like, I'm rich. And the dad's like, no, you're not rich. I'm rich. You're broke. Your parents are rich. That's what it's like. So when we would do these questions and qualify these leads, at the end of the day, I might have like, say, 10 or 20 names where I knew these people had money. Therefore, they were worth my time. And by worth my time, let me define that, right? When you're in a business that is managing money, your time has to be prioritized for the time spent that can yield the greatest results. That's not a commentary on valuing people differently. It's a commentary on valuing business opportunities differently. So I just want to make that clear. But now I knew these 20 people had enough money that if they liked the idea, they could. So when I called them back and they told me, no, that I stink, I can't pick the winner of a one-horse race, I probably can't even pick my nose right. When the one person said yes, I knew that person had money. All right, finally, someone thinks I have a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Jones. And finally, so let's buy 100,000 worth of Apple now. I won't let you down. That person says yes. And guess what? If they say no, what do you think? They say no and then drop it to like $500? And I appreciate, like, I get it, but I'm not going to do 100,000 regardless. Put me in for 25 grand, and if things work out, we'll go from there. Like, ding, ding, ding. Now I have a whole book of business of just those people. So that's how you build a career on Wall Street. It's a lot of hard work. It's getting told to go F your mother 500 times a day. It's calling people that are being called by everyone else. It's calling people that have 3 levels of secretaries. It's all designed for you to tell them why they should give you money and them to tell you why they're never going to give it. That's the game of Wall Street. The point being, translate that to what we're talking about now. Do we have a good idea? Do we have a patent? Are we protected? Can we talk about the future? Can we, the package that I'm working on, offer someone something that says, okay, I see what you're talking about. If the answers to all those questions are yes, and we understand how to interact and talk to people, who to talk to, how to talk to, the work ethic that's required, can we then say the month of March will yield us the results that we want? Well, I hope yes, right? Like, that's what's going on here. So to bring it all in, sometimes when I just riff, like I might actually save this video and just send this video. Like, hey guys, just watch this video. You'll understand what we're doing. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you for money. That's like minute, I don't know, 51, right? Which I'm not gonna do, but I'm sure there's something in this video that's worthwhile. To them, right? Like, not obviously to us. But the point being, so the rest of the week that I'm doing, I'm building out that package, because again, if you're going to do this much work, you want to make sure that you have the highest chance and probability of converting. So just because I send something to 100 people, that's not the entire game, right? Like, we all know conversion rates. If I send something to 100 people that converts 1% of the time, well, then that means I have to send to 1,000 people to get 10 people on board. But what if I spend the extra time that it converts actually 3% of the time? Well, then if I send it to 1,000 people, I get 30 people, 3 times the results. How much extra time did I spend to equal 3 times the results? That's why I'm late till Friday, because I recognize that what I'm doing now takes that. Can we be, oh yeah, no. So Maurice, everyone's included. In fact, everyone here will be included, because I'm not going to discount that anyone here is a secret millionaire, right? Like, a lot of you I've spoken to a lot of times, and I'm being silly, like, you don't need to be a millionaire. But do I think out of the like 100,000 emails that Rhino sends and gets open, that not a single one of them has like 3 commas in their bank account? I have no idea. And the point of me saying that is that the DNA of Rhino has always been the same since day one, which a lot of people have told me, like, you say too much to too many people. I will always say the same exact thing to Maurice as I'll say to Becky, as I'll say to Brian, as I'll say to Frida, as I'll say to Carl, as I say, it doesn't matter. Because I don't presume to know you as well as you know you, nor do I presume that there isn't a benefit in everyone knowing the same thing. And that's just a level of honesty and transparency, which is a really long-winded question and answer to just say yes, Maurice. Welcome to, I don't talk to anyone. I talk to only Ted all day. I live in my house. I don't leave this place. That's why I was probably so excited to talk today. I'm like, people are gonna listen to me. This is totally cool. But yeah, everything will always be sent to everyone. There'll never be anything that's like, oh, no, Maurice, you can't see this, only this. No, it'll just never be that. So yes. So I hope to have that done by Friday. I will have that done by Friday. What it looks like, I still don't know, which is why when I started the call, I was thinking to myself, what am I going to talk about? Because I still don't know what it looks like. But apparently I found 54 minutes of things to talk about. So yay, Anthony. But I think that's all. So I do love everyone. I actually just want to say to Becky, I've actually been thinking about texting you. So there's a lot of people that I have really good relationships with, and everyone keeps in contact as they do. But actually, and no one knows who anyone is, so I could say the first name, right? But Becky, I was actually speaking to quite often, and I haven't spoken to in like, I think a month or 2 months. And it's been on my mind. It really, really has been. I'm like, I need to like call or say hello to her. So I'm so happy to see you here. And hello, hi. And Rick posted on everything. I don't really post that many videos anymore. So Rick is like, Ant, you're not giving me things to post on. So again, when I write the emails and I say everyone's always on my mind, it really, like, I have 3 kids: Rhino, Christian, Amaris. That will never change. And I will always act the same to all of them. Let my son or daughter one day say to me, "Hey, dad, that's only a company." I'll say, "And you're only a bunch of cells," right? Like, these are my kids. So if you mess with the Rhino, you get the horns, right? I'll say that as I'm wearing Rhino dad, right? So anyway, love you all. Email me if you have any questions. I probably won't get back to it today, but I will by tomorrow. And I will post this probably by 2 or 3 o'clock, because right after this I have to run, and then I'll get back to work a little bit later, probably around 2 o'clock. But that's that. So I really do. I was watching a video on TikTok this morning, and someone ended it with like, "And I love y'all." And I was like, I don't know why people don't do that more. But I guess the prerequisite is that you really have to love the people. Like, you don't just throw the word love around. Like, you would have to date me for months for me to say I love you, or just come on Rhino and you'll hear me say I love you. Because Rhino, we've been together since 2017, and that was when it was born. The DNA that created the sperm and the embryo and the egg is as old as 37, right? So I love everyone here. And I'm rambling, so I'll see you all. Thanks. Bye.